We're back with Boyd Matson and National Geographic Explorer.
Few birds are known for their sleekness and speed, like the falcon. They're graceful and blindingly fast when they're in pursuit of prey. This is a peregrine falcon trained by Tom Steppen, who has been raising falcons since you were a teenager. What's so special about these birds of prey?
Well, they're the fastest animals in the world, and I hunt wild game with trained falcons. It's the world's oldest known sport.
Well, to really appreciate them, it's not seeing them sit on your hand, it's watching them in flight. And let's join Paul over here, your friend, who's going to show us what they can do.
The falcon is trained to return to his handler for a food reward. In the process, he will demonstrate his hunting, flying, and diving skills.
What he's doing now, he's just trying to climb now. He's trying to find a bit of height.
With the naked eye, as you watch the falcon moving through the sky, you can tell he's going at a pretty good clip. But that's nothing compared to what happens when they go into a dive. Then are they moving at 100 miles an hour, 200, or more? Well, one man was so intrigued with this question that he decided to learn to dive with falcons. It's an incredible experience when you mix falconry and physics.
Who wouldn't want to run as fast as a cheetah? Or swim as fast as a dolphin? Or fly as fast as a falcon? One man thinks he can keep up with the fastest animal on the planet and clock its top speed. But there's only one way he can do it: by jumping into the sky with a falcon. This is the peregrine falcon, one of nature's boldest predators. For thousands of years, humans have admired its powerful wings and fiery spirit. But one quality above all sets this bird of prey apart. When it comes to raw speed, no creature on Earth can match it. One of the best places to watch peregrines in action is the San Juan Islands of Washington State. When pesticides nearly wiped out the birds decades ago, these islands were some of the last places in North America the falcons persisted. Commercial pilot Ken Franklin has spent many a summer following the falcons in his helicopter just to see how they live, how they move.
What characterizes a peregrine falcon is its pure ability to hunt at high speed in the open airspace. And so the more that I was involved in flight with birds and started seeing their speed, the more I wanted to, I really was driven just to be basically on wing with them.
At home, Ken flies a small fleet of his own aircraft. He's as comfortable in the air as the falcons he raises. But only now does he have the bird he's been waiting for his whole career, a female called Frightful. Of all the falcons that Ken has raised, she's the one he believes will help him unlock the secret of the peregrine's amazing speed. At their home on San Juan Island, Ken and his wife Suzanne have combined her training as an ornithologist with his love of falconry.
Pete said his wings? Yeah. They were both?
They've turned their house into an eyrie for young falcons. They even share their bedroom with the birds. These young falcons believe that Ken and Suzanne are their parents and that this bed is their nest. Such imprinting was one of the techniques used to bring peregrines back from the brink of extinction. Ken and Suzanne have also reared their own brood. Their 6-year-old daughter, Rihanna, treats the birds like brothers and sisters.
Ow.
Biggest, medium, smallest.
It was more than 30 years ago that Ken captured and trained his first raptor, a red-tailed hawk. But right from the start, he knew his love was for falcons. His every waking thought was about being in the air with them.
From a very early age, I was just running across the fields, just hoping to get closer to the bird. You know, will it land on a rock so I can actually see it?
Ken was so obsessed that when he was 18, he and his friends bought one of the first hang glider kits on the market. Hang gliding got him up into the air, but it didn't get him any closer to the birds. Whenever he wasn't flying, he was working with falcons or watching them in the wild, doing what they do best, spotting prey from high above and plunging toward the earth in a high-speed dive called a stoop. This is the behavior that has fascinated scientists and falconers alike. But experts can't agree on the peregrine's top speed. For years, Ken watched his peregrines go after prey. Finally, he came up with a method to join them in the air. The key to Ken's method is training his birds to follow him. To do that, he designs his own lures, small cotton bags filled with lead weights and topped with a piece of meat.
Thicker?
Taking a lure with him, Ken takes off in one of his ultralights. Once he's up in the air, Suzanne releases Frightful. The bird follows Ken in the lure, just as if he were teaching her how to hunt. Frightful's also building her strength and stamina. At 3,000 feet, the real fun begins. Ken drops the lure from the ultralight, and Frightful dives right after it.
She is a peregrine. She wants to be eating up altitude fast. I think when you are doing something that you evolved to do, you can potentially say that's fun.
A mini-cam in the lure captures the strike. The first step is complete. Ken knows that Frightful will follow a falling lure. But to clock her maximum speed, Ken decides to take the next step with her.
How high is Ken willing to take his obsession with falcons? Find out when Explorer returns, right after this. Now you can tell that these peregrines are being raised by a falconer because it's the only way we could get close enough to see the mother and the father and 2 one-month-old fledglings. And now we return to our free-falling story, terminal velocity.
There was a possibility, because the literature says that a peregrine can go potentially 200 miles an hour, that we could potentially free fall in this vertical flight with them. So that's why we took up skydiving.
It's a wild idea. Ken's father, Roy, a veteran fighter pilot, agrees to help out, but he has his doubts.
Yeah, I thought maybe that was just a phase that he'd gone through, but
he was even more serious about it now and bound determined that he was going to train a bird to come to him while he's free falling through the air. And I said, that's a wild idea.
10 degrees flat.
As the bird is released, Ken takes the ultimate step himself. Right out the door.
I couldn't believe it. He brought the bird up with him in the airplane and threw the bird out. I thought, well, that's the end of that, you know, and here's the bird back there flying back there. Then he dives out, and I see the bird just stoop and just start drilling down there at 150 miles an hour or so to catch up with him. I couldn't believe it.
At last, Ken is flying with a stooping falcon. Something he has dreamed of since he was a boy. Falling at more than 100 miles an hour. And to his surprise, he thinks Frightful's having trouble keeping up.
Frightful was acting as if she didn't have enough speed to keep up with us. And we started believing some of the slower numbers that were being published, you know, like 90, 100 miles per hour. And we were quite confused because the bird was acting as if it was having difficulty diving vertically with us.
Day after day, Frightful seems to have trouble grabbing the lure. Then, on the last dive of the season, she surprises Ken. As Ken watches in amazement, she shifts into another gear and leaves him behind. Now Ken realizes that he's only seen the beginning of what Frightful can do.
It was a real breakthrough for us, because once we realized that in fact the bird was actually slowing down to keep up with us, that now we could pursue different training to get closer to what the birds can actually do in the wild as far as top speed.
To estimate Frightful's theoretical top speed, Ken needs a benchmark, an object the same weight as the bird.
Right there. It's a little bit.
He chooses a lead ball.
Light. That's what pounds per square inch. That's what she's fighting right there. To beat that lead ball, she's got to get her frontal area at least that size. But of course, she's going to have her head, which is like a canard wing out in front, perfectly smooth out in here to create flow coming in, and then flow out the back. Her tail and primary is just feathering completely out to nothing.
By dropping the lead ball from a known altitude and timing its descent, Ken can calculate its speed. Once the ball is dropped, it increases its speed until it reaches terminal velocity, the point at which air resistance equals the ball's weight.
Well, it's about 195 miles an hour. Well, that's kind of an interesting standard, because if that's the cross-sectional area presented to the wind, with the densest material I have to work with, then a peregrine's going to have to get its shape, cross-sectional area, down to fairly similar. But nevertheless, this falls 195. Can a peregrine beat a lead ball?
Todd, I know you got all this stuff on here. Are you?
To answer that question, Ken assembles a team of specialists.
That's a pretty good piece of information. So now calculate the acceleration right in this area here.
Norman Kent, an old friend and one of the best skydive photographers in the world. Previous researchers used stopwatches, radar, high-speed photography, even wind tunnels to measure a peregrine's top speed. with estimates from 90 to 300 miles an hour. Todd Roberts has a plan to modify a tiny computer used by skydivers.
We've taken a standard ProTrack that weighs about 36, 37 grams with batteries and everything. And we stripped it down. This weighs about 13 grams.
The stripped-down computer is clipped onto feather shafts just under Frightful's tail coverts. Ken is confident it won't affect her performance. They climbed to an altitude of 6,000 feet over the southern edge of San Juan Island. Is Frightful ready for the challenge? As she enters the airstream, she instantly gains control. When Ken joins her at 4,000 feet, Frightful switches into predator mode. She tucks and dives after him and the lure. 3,000 feet, she closes her wings into a classic diamond shape. 2,000, folding her body still tighter like a mummy, she easily passes Ken. Waiting as long as he can, Ken pulls his ripcord. But Frightful keeps going like a guided missile.
Still stupid? Open. Oh my God. What a stoop to the ground. Oh, she got it right. Oh, man.
Yeah, I sent that to Lars and Bruce Guard.
Ken's numbers reveal an amazing flight. Not only did Frightful reach a top speed of 157 miles an hour, she accelerated from 80 to 157 in just 4 seconds. And then, in a death-defying act, she pulled out of her dive at 57 feet, a half second before impact with the ground.
What they do to hyper streamline, and then when they achieve high speeds, how they hold it, blew us away.
Frightful has become one of the fastest Falcons ever recorded. But Ken thinks she can do better. After a series of low-level dives, Frightful is ready to try from a higher altitude. Ken plans to take his father's old Cessna to 15,000 feet, nearly 3 miles up.
About 10 seconds or 8 seconds or something, and then it'd be the same, maybe a little more with the...
Norman, the skydive cameraman, needs to plan the jump down to the last inch.
A little more altitude, maybe a little more...
Dave Ruckert, the jump coordinator and veteran of more than 5,000 skydives, packs Ken's chute. It's his job to make sure nothing goes wrong. Everyone, including Frightful, will be pushed to their limits. Thin air at 15,000 feet. At this altitude, breathing becomes difficult. Frightful, too, is curious about the extra altitude. This may be the biggest challenge of Norman's career. To film the fastest animal ever at close range in slow motion while wearing a 30-pound camera on his head. Although wild falcons may reach this altitude, This is the highest Frightful has ever been in her life. At 12,000 feet, Frightful goes into her dive. After 10 seconds, she's going 120 miles an hour. Ken releases the lure. After 15 seconds, 162. "21 seconds, Frightful shifts into hyperdrive. That's what Ken's been looking for. She shifts her shape to slip through the air's molecules. "43 seconds. She catches the lure, pulls out of her dive at 3,000 feet, and heads home. Moments later, Ken's chute snaps open. It looks like a perfect flight. But not just yet. To avoid injury, Norman must also make a perfect landing, balancing the heavy camera on his helmet.
That was a good one. But it was exciting for sure. All right. All right, Frightful. All right, Frightful. Yeah.
Although Frightful could take the lure anywhere, as always, she brings her prize home.
How did you like that beautiful flight?
The verdict is in.
183 miles an hour.
83.
All right.
I figured I did 180.
Frightful has broken her own record. And Ken still doesn't know how much faster she can go. To Ken, the greatest surprise is not that the peregrine can fly so fast, but that this falcon, one of the most studied birds on the planet, has kept its top speed a secret for so long. One week later, Frightful is clocked at an astonishing 242 miles an hour.